Hi guys, welcome back. It's your favorite real estate instructor and broker, Jose Gabriel. So in this video, we're going to look at exactly what is the seller's disclosure and how is it utilized. Let's check it out. Now, just a quick reminder that the information that's provided in this video should not be considered as legal or financial advice. If you need assistance in these areas, you should contact a professional that is licensed to provide those services. Okay, so from previous videos, we know that in Florida, on a residential transaction, you have to let the buyer know what issues the property has that the seller is aware of. Now, to go ahead and document that, since that is required by law, we go ahead and we normally ask for the seller to provide a seller's disclosure. Now, Florida law says you have to disclose those material defects, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in writing. So, in order to make sure that we document it, that's why we ask for a seller's disclosure. That way, you have a document that's signed by the seller and the buyer, which communicates exactly what defects the property currently has. Now, this has to be completed by the sellers, and you would think this is obvious, but sometimes agents are trying to help out the client, and the client says, "Well, I don't understand English very well," so they read the first question and they answer, the first question, the second question, the third question, and at the very end, they just ask the seller to sign. Later on, if there's any litigation or there's any question about whether something was disclosed or not, the seller could, honestly say, "Well, I didn't really fill that in. That was the agent that did that. I just signed it, and whatever he put on there, I don't know." So this must be completed by the sellers when it's going to be provided. It's not always provided. There are certain situations where it doesn't necessarily happen. For instance, in a foreclosure situation, the bank forecloses on a property, they would not provide a seller's disclosure. Okay, so the seller may say, "Well, what the heck? What's in it for me to provide a seller's disclosure?" And the answer is that this reduces their liability. So if we have a document, for instance, let's say there's a jacuzzi in the backyard. The jacuzzi does not function. The seller tells the buyer that. Well, in the seller's disclosure, they would document that. Later on, if the buyer says, "Well, you never told me the jacuzzi didn't work," yeah, it was communicated to you in the seller's disclosure. That's why that document exists. It reduces the liability and properly communicates to the buyer whatever defects the property does have. Now, keep in mind that the seller also can only disclose those things that they know about. If the AC breaks down a week after the closing, they were not aware of that defect, right? So unless they're trying to hide something, which is illegal, but if they can only disclose those things they're aware of. If the plumbing work breaks down a month later, 2 weeks later, it doesn't matter. It was properly disclosed at the time what the seller was aware of. So that's the way it works. You need to just make sure that you understand that you have to communicate those defects by law. Okay, so we know we have to disclose those defects that they know about, all right? But what about something that has been repaired? Let's say we have a situation where the seller says, "Listen, the roof had a leak 6 months ago, a year ago, and we went ahead and repaired it. Do we need to disclose that to the buyer?" Okay, well, this is a little bit of a gray area, I would say. You talk to some attorneys, they'll tell you one thing, other attorneys will tell you something else. But normally, it is considered good business practice to disclose that. Why? Because is it possible that that repair might, it start leaking again, this roof repair? Yeah, there's always a possibility that it might. And the buyer may turn around and say, "Well, you never told me about that. There was a leak there." And the seller here, if they disclosed it on the closing doc, on the closing disclosure, they can say, "Yes, I did. I put it in there. And even though we addressed it, we still mentioned it in there just to cover ourselves," right? Well, they won't say it exactly that way, but that's exactly why they would be putting it in there. So it is considered good business practice to disclose just in case, even though it's been repaired. Well, that's it. I hope you find the information useful. Please let me know what you think about the content of this video, and then if you have any suggestions or feedback for us, please by all means give me a call or send me an email. I'll be more than happy to respond to you. Thanks again for watching. You have a great day and stay safe.